Welcome to the American Academy of Grief Counseling's videogram on grief boundaries. And grief boundaries are an important topic. It's a topic that covers a variety of things when an individual is grieving and how they handle various external pressures. And again, What's Your Grief? A very good blog had an article on it. And I took a little bit from that article, information from it, and decided to create a video discussing grief boundaries and how they affect individuals who are grieving and how important they are to actually establish. So grief sends one on a very unique journey, and it's so unique that no one else can dictate where it goes. You are in control of that. Therefore, boundaries on what you deem acceptable or unacceptable have to be respected by individuals within your circle. So boundaries are important regardless, but boundaries during grief are especially important. And there are plenty of individuals out there who will try to push the boundary, test the boundary, and try to dictate to you what you should do during your particular grieving process. And these types of grief bullies will try to intimidate or alter and make you do things that you might not be ready to do. So it's extremely important. It's essential that you establish various boundaries, emotional boundaries for everything in life, but especially with grief itself. So boundaries are part of a healthy emotional life. They prevent manipulation. They prevent stress in your own life by establishing them themselves. They send a clear line in the sand, letting individuals know what you're willing to do, what you can do, and what you're willing not to do or cannot do. Doesn't mean we can't be flexible, that we can't be willing to help others. A boundary shouldn't be something that prevents us from being an individual that won't go out of the way to help another human being in need. But a boundary is there to prevent, on the contrary, those who would take advantage of us, those who would make us uncomfortable in who we are. So we can be flexible as we deem fit, but boundaries are very, very important. As I said, they're very important in grieving, and they help establish rules for what you want to do as an individual during that grief process. So it's important to establish boundaries. And the way that we do that is first by these three things here: being firm. Doesn't mean hostile. It just means letting individuals know this is what I'm willing to do or not willing to do while I'm grieving the loss of this particular individual. This is what I need. And most individuals will respect that. So we communicate our desires and we allow them to know what our boundaries are. Finally, we should not feel guilty. We don't have to apologize for not wanting to go somewhere. We don't have to apologize for setting a boundary. The boundary is about our own emotional health, and we have no need to apologize when it comes to our particular health itself. So there are going to be those who test the boundaries. So it's important for you to understand when these boundaries are tested, what you can do in response. So individuals are going to want to help, and it is completely 100% okay to accept help. In fact, it's an important part of grieving. But what if you're not ready to accept that help? A grief boundary of yours might be, I just want to be left alone. And it's okay not to accept help sometimes. It's okay to want to be alone. So if an individual is trying to help, establish that boundary with them. Let them know. Others are going to want to perhaps get you out of the house due to your grieving. It's a good intention. Well, again, a boundary. It's okay to say, I don't want to go out tonight. Now, if it's 2-3 years into the grieving, the loss, you might have some pathological issues with your grief, a prolonged grief diagnosis, or maybe a depression. But if it's been a couple weeks, a month, and you're still feeling kind of low because of the loss, and individuals are pushing that boundary, and you don't feel comfortable about going somewhere, you have to enforce that boundary. Others who want to help might want to give advice. It's okay, again, to say, I really don't want to discuss it. I really don't want advice right now, but would you be willing just to listen? So it's okay to tell someone that you're not ready to discuss or hear. It's okay also to tell individuals that if you're having issues, I feel really bad, but right now I can't really focus on other people's problems. I'm still processing what I'm going through. So you can tell them that as well if it makes you uncomfortable while you're grieving. Now, there are going to be a series of questions, intruding questions, maybe. Good intentions sometimes as well, but individuals are inquisitive by nature. And these types of intruding questions could also test your boundaries. And you might feel uncomfortable. You might feel like you have to answer for sake of not being rude or so forth. But that's far from the case. If individuals ask particular questions regarding the death of a loved one or the manner in which the loved one died, it is totally up to you how you wish to handle it. You could answer the question. You might be an extrovert, and that's fine. But if you're more of an introvert or you're not ready to talk about it, you have to enforce that boundary in order for your own emotional sanity. So you can simply say, as listed here, a few things. You can say, I'm not ready to discuss this, or this subject really upsets me, or this subject triggers emotions within me, or I don't want to relive it. I don't want to discuss it. I don't want to relive it. I just want to let it go. Or you can say, well, I'd like to discuss it, but the individual was very private. Or you could just simply say, can we discuss it at a later time? I really am not comfortable talking about this at the moment. So there's a variety of ways that you can stay away or stay out of that type of conversation. But you should not engage in that conversation if it makes you uncomfortable. Grief intrusion is especially big during the holidays because everyone wants you to be yourself again. And you're not going to be the same person. You've experienced a loss and you're incorporating that loss into your life story. So there's going to be changes in yourself, and that's fine. It's okay. But individuals, maybe after a year or so, they might get pushy, and they might again want you to be places you're not ready to be at. Now, again, there's a fine line between normal grieving process as opposed to prolonged grief or depression. So it's very important for you to understand, are you still in a normal grieving phase? And that's where grief counselors can come into play. But during the holidays, we have videos on this as well. During the holidays, it's fine to say that you don't want to come over for this particular event. Or maybe you can just say, I want to come over for just a little bit. I can't stay the whole time. Individuals might pressure you into making a recipe that you're famous for, and you might not feel in the holiday spirit to do this. Again, that's fine. You should not be pressured to come out of your boundary at the moment that you're in regards to the grief itself. Maybe it's okay just to have a phone conversation to let everyone know you're fine. It's just that you're having a hard time this particular year. Maybe older traditions are more difficult, and maybe you want to develop newer traditions and you don't want to partake in those types of older traditions. So it's important for you, not others, to determine what you want to do during the holidays. And for you, because only you can do it, to enforce your grief boundary itself. So grief is a very difficult thing. And it's more difficult when individuals with good intentions potentially try to alter our grieving patterns that are necessary for our own particular healing. So enforce your grief boundaries, establish them first, and then be sure to enforce them. And don't allow individuals to make you feel uncomfortable out of just tradition, that you have to be here or you need to show up to make other people happy. You have to deal with the grief that you're dealing with on your own, and only you can deal with that because it's a unique journey in itself. With that, we're the American Academy of Grief Counseling. We can be reached at 652-7776. Again, that's 330-652-7776. Our email is info@aihcp.org. And there we have our link as well, where you can check out our programs, as well as our 4 courses that lead to a 4-year certification in grief counseling. So if you're a qualified professional seeking that certification, please click that link. And there is the What's Your Grief article, Setting Your Grief Boundaries. I recommend you check out that article as well. I'd like to thank you for listening today and have a good day.